Alright, 5.2 A video. Um, According to Emerson and Smith, what is a racialized society? This is a term they use throughout the reading. Rather than trying to say racism or oppression or segregation, they use racialized society, and it really encompasses more than just saying racist or racism. It is essentially saying that all parts and aspects of our society are racially connected when they shouldn't be. An example being, I'm sitting in my van, I'm at work, and one of my young ladies that I work with, I'm a house parent for, is an African American, and we drove about 4 blocks over and crossed over some train tracks for her to get her hair done at a salon. And this is the African American part of town. It's just the reality. There's a lot more African Americans that live on this side of the train tracks. The house values are significantly lower. I don't know if the crime rate is higher on this side of town, but it has the feel of just being a little less safe, and that's a great example of how our society is racialized. In no way is this land any different than the land half a mile down the road, or there's no reason these houses should be smaller or closer together or not as safe, or that feeling should be there. It's just solely because a gathering of a race, and it has that stigma connected to it. And that's just a very, very easy, tangible example of what a racialized society, a product of us living in a racialized society. B, in what ways is claiming colorblindness counterproductive? This is something that was pretty convicting to me, because this has always been my approach. Like, treat everyone equal. I love you if you're white, black, blue, brown, yellow, green. That's something I've said and I've believed and I've used sort of as a cop-out in a lot of ways. I found it really interesting in Divided by Faith on page 33. There's an excerpt of evangelicals using this excuse as a sort of taking it from God giving us free will and freedom to make our own choices, and inserting it into sort of this colorblind argument. And this, I can very much relate to this, because this is what I've done throughout my life. I've often said, when I've seen an injustice or encountered something that was clearly not fair and injustice to a certain race, I always will look at the response and say, well, that person or that group of people didn't do what they should have done. They had the freedom to not make that decision. They had the freedom to stay in school and have the education. They had the freedom to not make that choice, not value those things, which would not have led to this outcome that's negative. When in reality, the systematic oppression, systematic racism of our racialized society, it's just harder to succeed for minorities, and specifically in a lot of areas, really, not specifically in one area, but it's just harder for minority young people to succeed, where I definitely worked hard to succeed, but it's been easier for me compared to a minority. C, in your opinion, why does talking about race and ethnicity often become difficult and volatile? Why is it difficult for you to talk about race and ethnicity personally? It's a sensitive subject. Everyone can relate. Everyone has their own opinion. It's personal to everyone. This has been a touchy subject for me, because I come from a white family and raised middle class Christian, and my oldest sister was sort of the black sheep of the family, and she had some relations with different ethnic groups, and it wasn't really accepted well, and we were, as a family, were judged by that. And I've got 3 mixed nieces and nephews now, and I love them to death, and I've been challenged a lot more from this, but some of the interactions my sister had with men of other ethnicities fed into the stereotype that society has for them. So my biggest interaction and connection with a certain ethnic group, the stereotype was 150% true. Like everything that's supposed to happen happened. And that at a young age, going to elementary and middle school, I was like, oh, that stereotype's true because that's what happened to my family. It happened to my sister. So it's something that's sensitive and it's personal to everyone. And everyone's affected by it. And as a white male, I don't want to discount my hard work and success because white privilege makes it sound like I didn't work hard or I don't deserve the things that I've got. And really quickly, the last question is, according to Emerson and Smith, in what ways does organization and structure of the church contribute to the problem of racialization? I think it goes back sort of to that free will argument and conversation I had earlier. I think that feeds into that a little bit, but also we as Christians were all for, not all for, but there was a movement for social justice and civil rights and freedom, but that didn't continue into real unity and real equality in the church even. And the cultures just didn't mix and didn't mesh, and we had a view of our own personal preferences over the biblical truth of we're all brothers and sisters and we're all the same and equal. And even in and through our preferences, we can worship God together. And then just the reality of our racialized society has made it more difficult for us to operate together as one body and one church. So yeah, those are my answers for the questions.